Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. Yeah!
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'll be joined by Scott Roberts of National Pool Route Sales. We're going to go over the ins and outs of purchasing a pool route and selling your pool route if you're interested in selling your route one day. And we're going to cover what exactly buying a pool route is and go over some of the aspects of getting a pool route through purchasing it versus in building it organically, and why that may be a better way to start your business versus growing it by advertising and going and trying to build a route from scratch. And so we're going to cover all of this in today's podcast. Pool Service Pro. Open a Leslie's wholesale account today and receive wholesale pricing on products you use every day. Leslie's Pool Supply offers convenient locations that are open 7 days a week. Another great benefit of opening a Leslie's wholesale account is Leslie's referral program. Get referred to a customer looking for weekly pool service. Also receive priority service, enhanced rebate programs, a discount on your general liability insurance through SPA, a discount on your pool routing software through Skimmer, and an opportunity to co-brand with Leslie's on your social media, website, truck, and more. Save time and money and grow your pool service route and become a Leslie's Pro. So I'm joined today by Scott Roberts of National Pool Route Sales. How are you doing today, Scott?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you, David.
Yeah, so what's your background in the industry as far as, have you worked in the industry and things like that? And then we'll jump into your role over there at National Pool Route Sales.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Well, for about probably 6+ years, I was actually in the pool industry. I started out very, very small, just the small route of about 20 accounts. And I grew it mainly organically into a very, very large pool route for many years. Started out with the pool service, had gotten into adding in the repairs aspect of it, parts and repairs, and then eventually into renovations, which is, dealing with a lot of the pool renovations and everything that goes along with that, and had a showroom. We did leak detection. We had a pressure washing division. We sold wholesale. So within 2.5, 3 years, it had grown into one of the larger companies in my county. I didn't expect that all to happen so quickly, but it did. And then eventually, after about 6+ years, I ended up selling, and I did that through National Pool Route Sales. So that's how I was always introduced to the founder, Charles Baird. Over the years, he and I shared the same faith. And we always had long conversations about lots of things. And I sold partial routes throughout the year through him, enjoyed my experience, and we had a good relationship. So when I ended up selling my final company through him, he asked, "Hey, what are you going to be doing now?" And it turned out it ended up being a pretty good fit. I flew out to California, spent the week with him, his team, the National Pool Route Sales. Honestly, I just fell in love with everyone out there. It was fantastic, good faith-based company. With that being said, I joined the team, and obviously there's a lot more to it. But I've been here now for over 5 years, handling Florida exclusively on the buyer side, and of course I deal with sellers constantly as well.
That's great, and that's a great transition, I think, because for anyone to know anything about pools, you have to actually have been someone who owned the company, and I think that's a comforting thought to people that are wanting to buy or sell the route, knowing that you have that background. And with that said, I think there's some confusion of what actually a pool broker is. Is it kind of like a business broker or a real estate agent? What category do you fit into?
It's so funny that you asked that, because even friends of mine and just people in my life, when they say, "Hey, so what are you doing with yourself these days?" or new people I meet, it's always hard to explain exactly what I do, because I can't just say, "Well, I'm a business broker." They say, "Oh, all right, so you sell pizzerias, you sell." I said, "No, not exactly. Basically, we are business brokers that really specialize strictly in a niche market, which is only the pool route sales industry." The founder of our company, Charles Baird, started this whole industry of pool route sales 35, 40 years ago. And at this point, National Pool Route Sales has sold probably upwards of 13,000 pool routes over the years. And even myself, I've been doing this for a long time. I've sold probably over 1,000 pool routes at this point myself, working with buyers and sellers. But yes, we strictly deal with pool route companies that are out there that that what they do is clean pools. It starts off there. Of course, we'll do anything from people that sell pool routes to also who do pool route repairs or repairs only even. But primarily it's pool routes, and then companies that will also do the renovations and things like that, and even up into pool builders who also can have pool routes that they generate on a regular basis that they want to sell. We connect them with the buyers, put their deals together. We are transaction brokers, but we act with a lot of experience, and we're able to really help navigate what could be a very difficult process for buyers and sellers to find each other and even trust each other in the process. We have lots of things put in place with obviously doing this for years that make the transitions very, very smooth.
And I think one reason why, the pool route brokers are separate from, say, the business broker, it is a pretty specific kind of sale. With that said, what would be some of the advantages of buying a pool route rather than building from scratch? And there's some obvious advantages right away, of course. With your experience having a pool route, selling it, and then working for National Pool Route Sales, what would be the main advantage of actually buying a route versus building something from scratch in your area?
Buying a pool route, even my own experience, I didn't actually purchase a pool route to start out. I actually wish I did. I came from having a very large house cleaning company. What I learned from owning the house cleaning company was that I loved the residual income model of business. I loved it. I loved every month. I just loved the fact that money was coming in. I could just hit people's credit cards, or just, those checks are coming in the first of the month. Wow, this is great. I don't have this, unlike pressure washing industry or things like that, where a lot of the home services that you just have the one and dones, and then you're always advertising and chasing all your competitors and chasing new business. So the residual income aspect was what drew me to the pool service industry. But I did start out maybe a little, more confident than I should have been. And I actually, it took me 7 to 8 months to build my route up to a full-time route, starting from scratch almost. And it was really difficult. I should have just purchased a pool route that existed. I actually had the money to do it. I really just had, I think my ego was at a point. I think I thought I was invincible. I could do anything. But in retrospect, I definitely made a mistake there. I should have purchased a pool route, had the income from day one, paid myself back within a year. That's usually the general return on investment, and had all the credibility going from day one. It makes a lot of sense to purchase one if you have the funds available to do it. Otherwise, you're running around your first year chasing money and chasing yourself, and it becomes very frustrating. That's where a lot of people fall out in their first year.
I can see that. You have to have the right personality too to build something from scratch, and a lot of people don't have that kind of go-getter, go out there and kill it kind of personality. Brings me to the next question. I'm a buyer. Let's say that let's say I'm a financial advisor, or I'm someone who sells cars for a living, and I want to get into the pool business because I've heard it's good and you can build it, you can work different hours and have more freedom. And that's kind of the truth behind some of the examples I just gave you. There's people in my group that were those professions and never had any time in their lives to do anything. And so I have no experience at all. So as a buyer, I call you. What am I actually looking at? What am I looking for? What are some of the things that, I don't know anything about buying a pool route. So what would you say the first thing is?
Well, okay, the first would be the time frame. We all have to be on the same page as to what the realistic time frame is. If you're looking many, like a year or two out, most likely any of the routes that we have, well, most definitely any of the routes that we have listed, it wouldn't be something to necessarily talk about right away because they'll be sold already. But there'll be a whole new crop of listings. We never have a shortage of good listings. There's not an abundance of them, but we always have a good amount available. But really what a buyer is looking for is just something that that they can take over and that they can see themselves doing well. We like to build relationships between the buyers and the sellers because really that is what is going to be happening. It's one thing to make a deal and sign a contract, but it's another thing then to put into practical purposes the transition period. Our company, and this is not to slam competitors because I think I know how they all work, but I know that our company really digs into the transitions. Probably, I can't speak for them, but I know that nobody can do it better than us. We don't just leave the buyers. We don't leave the sellers. We're still there. We take it very, very seriously. Sometimes people ask us, why do you do so much? Why do you give so many things after the close? why do you give all the, your millionaire pool man course? Why do you give all this for free? And the reason is, well, number one, it helps us sleep at night. Okay, we're all good, ethical people here in National Pool Route Sales. We don't want to have any phone calls and with people being upset. That's why our reviews are pretty much all stellar over all the years, and we don't ask for them really. They're just good reviews. But also, every buyer that comes into this, eventually, is going to end up selling. Let's face reality. So there is a bit of a personal interest that we have, financially, to make sure things work out as well, which is always good to be incentivized when you're doing anything in life, get the most out of people. So from us, so from our standpoint, what's going to happen? Is somebody going to, have a pool route that they buy from us, and then 20 years later, they're going to fall down dead at the side of the pool and land in the pool dead? No. Chances are, okay, they're going to want to sell it and enjoy the fruits of their labor and their growth and their success. And most likely, if they've dealt with us for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and we know them intimately, who are they going to list with and then sell through and probably have the most success? Somebody brand new that doesn't know them, build a relationship of selling, or somebody that they've been dealing with for years. That's how Charles Baird built his business. That's how he founded it based off of the principles of just treating people like family, buyers and sellers, treating everyone right, making sure that the deals were ethical. And we have weekly staff meetings, that we talk about all this stuff, and it's always everything. We don't bring people into our company that act in selfish, really act for selfish reasons. It's all in the best interest of the buyer and seller, and just dealing with good ethics.
And we can talk a little bit about the sellers too. Let's say that you're a pool professional, you have a route, maybe you have 130 pools, and you can't find an employee, and you're having trouble. That's a lot of pools for one person to do. They would probably be wise to contact you and sell part of that route off. Some people may be doing this for, like you said, 10, 15 years, and they're really tired. They're getting old. Things aren't what they used to be with your body anymore, doing this kind of business, and you want to sell. And so they would just call you, and you would put the route up for sale. I mean, what are some of the things you could tell someone who's thinking about selling part of the route or their complete route right now?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Sellers will sell for all different reasons, because buyers will always ask. It's one of their first questions. So what's the reason they're selling? And we always want to know the honest truth behind that. And I would say, yeah, it's people just like what you said. Right now, that there's certainly been an issue in the country with the labor market. Unfortunately, the government seems to have made it pretty easy for people not to work. But that will be changing soon enough. Even as of this morning, there are 26 states that are pulling back and ending their federal, unemployment, extensions as of today or soon. So soon enough, at least by September, that should all be done, and you're going to see people, employees flooding back into the restaurant market and into the service industries, pool service, all that. So I think things will change. But yes. So, David, I'd say we get sellers who, let's take the average person, okay? Somebody, they have a pool route and they start with, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 accounts, or even they buy something, 70, 80, 90 accounts. And like you said, 100 accounts, and they get maxed out. So what are they going to do? Well, we say take on the accounts anyway, because every account is ultimately worth money in reality to somebody, and could be great for somebody. So take on the account, get it serviced the best you can, and maybe, let's say you're at your max, maybe sell off a certain amount of accounts, if you see that your growth rate is at a point, that you can do that and not take a big financial hit, because all you're really doing is turning away money. If you just want to sell 20 accounts with us, sell 20 accounts. If you could pick up 20 more in the next month, 2 months, 6 months, 10 months, whatever. People, like you said, who have labor problems or this or that, not a problem. Just make sure the accounts are in good standing. Make sure that people are relatively good payers. Obviously, that's always important. Of course, some people miss a payment from time to time. Doesn't make them a bad account. People are human, But basically, just be realistic about the fact that we don't want to take your garbage accounts. We're smart enough to understand what that is. Certainly, we have a lot of experience doing this. Everyone on our team, we know garbage when we see it. Okay, we're not going to take it. We turn down plenty of listings that potentially, I don't want to say for sure, I could assume that there's some other brokers out there that might just take them just to have them on their website. We won't do that. We don't do it. it's not worth it to us to have the headache, nor can we, knowingly put a buyer in jeopardy in any way. So as long as you have some accounts that are good payers, try to group them up as tight as you can. Everybody likes a tight route. So, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, the more you can sell, usually the better. Okay. Because people like to come in, and a lot of our buyers are looking to leave an industry or leave a corporate job, or, so they want something that could take the place of their income, and maybe they have children, or they just want to support themselves and a family, or maybe just themselves, but they want to make a certain amount of money and have a full-time job. So whatever as being a full-time route as a seller would be, that's ultimately the best option to list. So 70, I say a sweet spot is anywhere 65 to 95 accounts is always a good sweet spot for listing, where you're going to get buyers who can leave a job, and we in National Pool Route Sales will be able to explain and help give a roadmap to growth and a great career for any buyer. But David, anybody with any amount of accounts, usually, 15, 20 or more would be probably the minimum that we like to take. That's fine. Give us a call and let's have a good talk about it.
And that kind of leads to the next question. You kind of answer some of that in this one where you talk about not taking the garbage accounts. But if you're buying a business, like let's say you're buying a market, you can actually drive to it, see the inventory, see the seller, see the foot traffic, or a fast food restaurant, you can drive by the place and see how busy they are. But with a pool route, you can't drive by 90 accounts and, see and there's some disclosures, things like that, and some things that you can't let people back there, of course. And so it's a little bit harder, I think, for the buyer to see the business until they're ready to buy it. And so you vet the sellers pretty well, like you just mentioned. So what are some other things you can say to the buyer to reassure them that, hey, look, this route that we're advertising, these 90 pools, these are great accounts. They've been with the seller for 2 or 3 years, 4 or 5 years. How do you talk to the buyer and let them know that they're actually buying the product that's advertised?
Good question. It is something that a lot of buyers, when they get to me, it is usually, I'd say 8 out of 10 times, and anybody selling pool routes will probably agree with this, that you have to get the buyers to understand that they're not actually purchasing technically a business, they're purchasing a route, and it's a little different. One of the biggest differences with National Pool Route Sales, and this is how Charles founded this, is that there's a seller guarantee put in place, which guarantees the recurring service billing income. In other words, that's really important, and that's unlike purchasing a pizzeria or a dry cleaners or some type of store or some type of business like that, where you have to look at tax returns and forensically, have your CPA rip apart every aspect of that to make sure it's real, and all that, bank statements and, oh my God, balance sheets and EBITDA and all that. The difference with us is there's a seller guarantee in place, unlike those purchases, which guarantees that what you're really buying, which are the accounts. So to break it down, let's say there are 80 accounts that a buyer is looking at purchasing. Those accounts, let's say the average billing is $100 per month, per account. So let's say that's $8,000 in recurring income. That's the subject of the purchase price. Meaning that's the subject of what you're buying, that $8,000 in billing. It's not whatever profit and loss statements you've seen or tax returns or anything like that. What's nice is that the $8,000, we can easily figure out, National Pool Route Sales, what your profitability and net take home is going to be. We've been doing this for years. We know very closely what it's going to be, and we're very accurate about it. When you add in parts and ways to do repairs that are allowed, we know how to do it, and we know how to try to connect people with the ways to make all the income. But basically, that income is guaranteed in the process. So at the end of the 3 months, which is literally 13 visits out to a pool, you as a buyer, even because you have trainers selling involved and everything out in the field with you, you're going to know who's staying and going. So at the end of the 90 days, you have to have all $8,000 of that particular route we're talking about here, for example, has to still be coming to you, being paid to you as the new owner of the accounts directly from the customers. And they still have to be on for service, So if that's not the case, then sellers have to replace those accounts within 30 days or it has to be refunded. And we hold back escrow money. So whatever you paid for that particular account, let's say you lost 2 accounts in the transition. Historically, our loss is under 2%, with these transitions. But we hold back the largest escrow. We hold back minimum double what any other broker holds back, starting out, after the closing. That's the truth is, put me up against any other broker in the country. Nobody can compare to what we hold back. And we do that because we take on sellers that have really good routes that they stand by, and we get the cream of the crop, I feel, so that they have no problem with us holding back more. Sellers that don't want to hold back what we want, we almost don't want them anyway, because we're wondering, well, why not? Why aren't you standing by what you have? So we tend to get really, really good sellers, and then we do well with the buyers. So I don't know if that answers your question a little bit.
Yeah, that pretty much explains it, because people get confused at what they're actually buying and what kind of safety nets are in place, and that reassures the buyer that they're protected. It's an escrow that they go through just like any other kind of big financial purchase. Now, that leads to another question. If you're buying a business that makes $8,000 a month, it's not going to be cheap, and people may not have $80,000 or $100,000 in the bank. So let's say I want to buy a route. I'm tired of my corporate job, but I don't have $100,000 in the bank sitting there to buy a route. So what can they do? I'm sure there's finance options. How does that work out when it's not like financing a house purchase or something like that, right?
It's a tough topic, because there are not many financing options available. I don't like to blow smoke at anybody and tell everybody, no problem, yeah, financing. There are financing options available. However, there are two different types of purchases. One will be a purchase of a much larger route, which really is at that point a company. Maybe 300, 500, 800, 1,000, 2,000 pool accounts. Now you're talking about a lot of moving parts. You're talking about a whole different situation. There are employees coming over. There are vehicles. There are lots of assets. That is more of a company that you're purchasing, and it's more of a culture. If that's the case, then we can try to get the Small Business Administration, SBA, involved, and we have. When I first came here, I started, over 5 years ago, I started pushing SBA deals a lot more, and and our company's found that we've sold a lot of routes that way, but it's very difficult. So that's on larger ones usually only, and your listeners need to know that. So many buyers come into this just assuming, especially even with all the PPP money and all that through COVID, people just assume, well, I'm just, hey, I've got, I'll just get something I'll get a business loan. They're not going to get a business loan. I can pretty much just tell you that it's not happening. And the reason is sellers, that are smaller, meaning on these smaller routes, which are, good sales and good routes, but it's the majority of what's sold and purchased are the ones that are single owner operator routes, maybe 100 accounts or less. On those, there's not going to be the cooperation or the ability of sellers of those sizes who run these, one man, one woman operations usually, to have amazing tax returns to be able to put forth to the SBA. The SBA will require 3 years of tax returns, profit and loss statements. They have to show growth, there's this and that. Sellers have not prepped up themselves, in all reality, to be able to do that. So business loans are not going to be able to happen, because the banks are going to be wanting to see all the business financials right away. So that's probably not happening from a business loan. Like, they can't just walk into their bank and get a business loan. It's not going to happen. Secondly, there are some lenders out there that can provide funding. If your credit score is usually above 700, we can put you in touch with them. They have nothing to do with us, but we referred many people to them. They're good people. But, there's always going to be a fee associated with that you'll have to navigate through. It could be a few $1,000s to you, if they're able to get you the funding that's available. And then on top of that, the interest rate could be 9, 10, 11, 12%, which, is not really great. But then again, it could be the only option for somebody. And that's usually for these companies to arrange lines of credits and loans and this and that. It is what it is. It's a necessary tool sometimes. And David, where that comes into play could be, well, maybe a route is, $94,000. There's no seller financing available, which is 95% of the case. Sellers do not want to finance. I'll get into that in a minute to explain that a little bit more. But let's say somebody is coming from a corporate job or something, and they got $50,000 that they could put into this, or they have an IRA that they want to roll over. That's fine too. We can refer them to a good company to help them with that process, where they don't get hit with the penalty, legally. Maybe to bridge the gap, maybe this person, these couple of lenders I can refer them to, maybe even though the interest rate's a little bit higher, it might make sense, because David, let's face it, they've got to get into the pool route. to make the change, right? So they have to do something. It's always best if they have their own money. And honestly, the best way would be a HELOC loan, some type of home equity line of credit. That's where they're going to get the best situation, and they can pay themselves back in a year or two anyway, pay off the HELOC loan. I mean, that's an idea. They'll get a better interest rate. But we could always discuss the options. But seller financing, it'll always be on our website, poolroutesales.com, poolroutesales.com. It'll always say next to the listings whether or not there's seller financing, what percentage those sellers are willing to finance. It's completely turned into a seller's market. It's always been, but it's really a seller's market, David, since COVID,
Mm-hmm.
And, as you know, things have gone pretty well in the pool industry since COVID.
Yeah, I would say then, to buy a pool route is like an investment, but in yourself and in the business. So if you're saving up money to buy maybe an investment property, or if you're investing in the market, you can definitely get some liquid cash out of there. But saving up for a pool route is kind of like saving up for an investment property, I think. And so you're going to need some money, or most of the money, as you're saying. And I think it's also better to start with all that money in there anyway, more cash from you than a loan, because then you're going to maximize the income coming in. And we talked about the cost of some of that, the routes and things like that. Basically, the cost is based on how many pools they're selling, basically, right? Is kind of how you calculate it.
Well, it's based on, it's sort of, yeah, it's always based off of the recurring income. It wouldn't be based on the number of pools, because there's also sometimes there's commercial accounts that bill out a lot more, obviously residential. People will see that we have sometimes, primarily just residential listings, but there are some that have only commercial accounts, and that is somebody's appetite out there. We sell those, not a problem there. And, and there's some different guarantees in place with that sometimes. But yeah, for the most part, like let's take that route, for example, again, that 80 account route that might be billing out $8,000. Generally speaking, and the way Charles Barrett always set this up, it was 1 year of the monthly recurring billing was how these pool routes were priced out. That's it. It's not emotionally, these pool routes are not emotionally valued by the seller who says, hey, I've had this 25 years. Oh my God, this isn't the pizzeria maker who came over from, let's say, Italy, that's doing this 35 years and built up a great business, and there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and somehow he's going to emotionally value his pizzeria at a lot of money. The sellers are not allowed to bring emotion into it. It's literally they're selling accounts, and it's almost like a commodity of sorts, so that's what it's going to sell for. Now, I have noticed, David, that there's a trend upward. And we're hoping it doesn't continue, but there's been a little bit of a trend upward where because of COVID and everything, sellers are a little harder to come by these days. We've had some sellers pull their listings because they're like, I'm not selling this thing. My God, the pandemic, because pool routes have now proven that they're back in 2008, that they're recession-proof. Okay, that didn't really affect pool routes. That they are pandemic-proof. And then, hey, they're even riot-proof. Even when the riots were going on, we're still selling pool routes. Doesn't matter. People still out there doing their thing. It's an unbelievable industry. I think as Charles always said, it's the best industry probably in the country, in our opinion.
Yeah, I think if you're thinking about selling your pool route, now would be ideal. And I talked to a guy in Orlando. I did a podcast, and Fernando is his name. And the way he grows his business is by buying small pool routes here and there. And he said to me that, the money he was been marketing, building from scratch, and the route's not going to be tight if you're getting someone, that wants your service from far out of your area. So his method was always buy pool routes. And I think on the flip side of that, if you have a pretty big pool route right now, since the market is, I guess, at the peak, don't want to say that in terms of that, but you mentioned it's the seller's market. Now would be ideal to sell part of your route off and cash that money out, and maybe buy another route somewhere else to build up your business in a different area, or do something else with that money. Definitely, maybe get that money out and buy an investment property. But of course, the market's pretty high there too, as far as prices go. As talking to a seller right now, what would you say to someone who's thinking about selling their pool route? Should they do it now?
It's just going to completely depend on what they want to do, right? It's their situation. We'll get it sold, almost every time. I mean, unless there's something wrong with the route that starts to come out. I mean, everything comes out in the wash, during the process. If somebody has a good pool route, that they should be able to sell it with us fairly timely. Some can sell in 2 days. I've sold routes sometimes before we even have it listed up on our website or marketed out all over the country, because I have such a network of buyers I know and this and that. But yeah, sure. We just want to have a good dialogue. Okay. Chris Webb from our company, he handles our listing side of it, and he's phenomenal at it. And he just brings such a good, he's such a good, he's such a good man. He just brings a good conversation because he genuinely cares, and he's going to dig in with every seller to understand why it is that they're selling, what their expectations are. And then we give an honest thought and assessment as professionals as to what they could expect, what they need to do to get this thing sold properly and fairly. But yeah, it's just going to depend, David, on everyone's situation. What's the reason for the selling? It always comes down to it. We bring the human side to it. This is much more for National Pool Route Sales. It means so much more than just taking a listing and finding a buyer. No. We know everyone's names. We know who they are. We know the reasons why. This way, when it gets to me on the buyer side, and very often I'll be in on the seller calls with Chris. We'll both talk to the sellers even together sometimes, and I'm happy to do all that because it's going to come to me anyway. And I need to be able to explain to every buyer, if they're looking at a route, let's say in Lee County, Florida, with 65 accounts, I don't want to say, well, hold on a second, let me look that one up, and okay, it looks like here there's no. We're not sales agents or brokers like that. We know who it is that we're dealing with. We can say, oh yeah, that's Joe, or that's Tina's route. Yeah, that's fantastic. Listen, here's the situation. Let me tell you about Tina and Joe. It's so nice. It's sort of an old school way that we do things. That's the way Charles did it. That's the way I've always done it. I'm turning 50 this year. Yay. And I can't believe it, but I am. I'm turning 50 in October. And, I'll just say, from all my years of being in business, I've had so many different companies and employees. I love National Pool Route Sales. I love the way that we do it. I love that they let me do what's right on my end, and then because they know who I am as a person and a human. So I like that about everyone that works here, everyone that's part of the company, and we will get to know the sellers, David. So the sellers there isn't a right or wrong time for anything. It's going to be, let's have the conversation and let's figure it out together. If it's not the right time, we'll decide, together, and figure out when is the right time. We're never going to push anybody.
So I know you're going to stick around, and we're going to talk more in depth about buying a pool route, because there's a lot of details that people may have questions about. And so this is just the first of a few podcasts we're going to do this week. The questions are going to get a little more deeper. But just for those who are listening to this first one, where can they go to learn more about buying and selling a pool route, and to contact you? Maybe they have questions and they want to contact you directly, or contact National Pool Route Sales. Throw that out there right now before we kind of continue on with the other parts of this podcast recording.
Yeah, that's no problem. It's National Pool Route Sales, National Pool Route Sales, which is www.poolroutesales.com. National Pool Route Sales. Our phone number, toll free to reach our office and then get connected with anybody here, is 877-766-5757. Or they can reach me directly if they want at 561 area code. That's 561-708-4744. That's my office number, not a texting number. So just give a call, because I really love to talk to people.
Great. I really appreciate the time on this. And I think you've kind of explained in a nutshell in 30 minutes what buying a pool route and selling is all about for listeners who may not even know that this service exists out there. So I appreciate that.
You're very welcome, David. Thanks so much for the time. I look forward to the next series.
And I hope you can tune into the follow-up podcast in this series. We're going to unpack buying a pool route in more detail in the next two podcasts. We're also going to talk about the state of the industry in another episode. And then we're going to talk about some of the keys to being successful in your pool service business. And you'll find the links to these episodes in this podcast series. I'll have them in the description for you. Or you can go to my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. And if you click on the banner, you're going to see, or on the banner, you can click on the podcast icon, I should say. And that'll take you to a drop-down menu of the podcast recordings. And then you can find the other podcasts in this series there that way. And definitely listen to the other series, because they'll go more in depth into the whole process and some more details that weren't covered in this first one. And again, we're going to talk about other aspects like the state of the industry and how to be successful in your business. So these episodes are definitely for all listeners out there who not only want to purchase a pool route, but want to better their business and to learn some of the better business practices that National Pool Route Sales teaches to those that purchase a route through them. And if you're interested in enhancing your pool service business, definitely check out my coaching program at poolguycoaching.com. A lot of great benefits for joining there, including the ability to text and call me when you run into trouble out there. Again, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. Pool Service Pro. Open a Leslie's wholesale account today and receive wholesale pricing on products you use every day. Leslie's Pool Supply offers convenient locations that are open 7 days a week. Another great benefit of opening a Leslie's wholesale account is Leslie's referral program. Get referred to a customer looking for weekly pool service. Save time and money and grow your pool service route and become a Leslie's Pro.